Taylor to You is a podcast where your host Taylor Doherty talks with individuals who fascinate her as she's inspired by the greatest gift us humans have to offer, our story. Each guest story is unique and tailored in its own way, and that's exactly what Taylor loves about them.
When I left that field and I'm laying in my hotel room, I'm like, man, I can play. Like, I know I can do this. And that was really cool for me because...
That was probably a great moment.
Great moment. And that was really cool for me because you're standing on the sidelines for the 6 games, waiting for your opportunity. You get your opportunity after you're like... And I didn't play a perfect game by any means, right? But there were certain times within the game where I was like, man, I can do this. I always have like a mindset of like, just give me a chance. Just give me a chance.
This is your host, Taylor Doherty, and after this episode, you might consider me a sportscaster. I mean, I learned a lot about football, and that is because my next guest is David Edwards, offensive guard for the Los Angeles Rams. David and I go way back, and it was just so fun talking to him about his football journey from playing quarterback at our alma mater, Downers Grove North High School, to now playing in the NFL. Wow, it's still surreal to say it out loud. David was a Badger at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where he was named first-team All-America by the American Football Coaches Association, preseason second-team All-American by Sporting News, and was featured in Sports Illustrated. Now, he has completed his first season as an LA Ram, and he wasn't even projected to play. He did start in 10 of the 16 games he played in, defying those odds. And I'm just so proud of him, and I can't wait for you to learn about his journey and how his dream was realized as a professional football player. Please enjoy my good friend, David Edwards. Do you remember when I was mascot for the one game?
I do remember
Oh my
that.
gosh, it was funny because this morning actually my mom reminded me of that, and I was like, God, I completely forgot.
That's hilarious.
But I remember they needed like a backup mascot for the game, and it was the first game of the season. I think it was our senior year, and it was blazing hot. I mean, in the
super
suit.
humid. And
Right. And I remember I ran out to the field to do the Pledge of Allegiance, or wait, not Pledge of Allegiance. What is it?
National Anthem?
Oh, okay. That would be it. Okay, National Anthem. And I stood next to you, and I remember being like, hey, David. And you were like, Tay? I was like, yep, I am the mascot for the game.
You were perfect for it, though.
I mean, I think I'm loud.
High energy, super, enthused. It was awesome.
Thank you. So I guess we were both stars in that field that day.
There you go.
But you might have, your career lasted a little bit longer than mine did. You had mentioned that your dream was to play quarterback at Downers Grove North because your cousins, Garrett and Tommy, were both starred there as quarterback before you. Did you feel as though you had some big shoes to fill, or did you have a little bit of pressure to succeed in that position?
Yeah, I think so. You hit it right on the head. I grew up like a huge Downers North football fan. Like that was my dream, was to play quarterback. And I had aspirations of playing in college, playing in the NFL, but I always thought of watching my cousins play, and that was the coolest thing in the world to me when I was such a little kid. I went to every game, knew every player.
Friday nights, baby.
Friday nights. And it's true, but I never thought of, okay, I had to fill the shoes of my cousins or had these, super high expectations because they played so long ago. It was a long time. It would have been different, I thought, if, I graduated 8th grade and he graduated as a senior, and I'm walking in kind of like...
Right. You literally would be filling his shoes in that situation. Well, and not only them, I mean, they later played college football too. Tommy walked on at Iowa, and then Garrett had a scholarship at Illinois, and then your great uncle also played at Illinois, and then not to mention your dad, the OG David Edwards, he did play college football as well at Indiana. So you do have football in your history, in your family, it's in your blood. And I think what's interesting is when, then you graduate high school and you go into college, it kind of was where when you were getting recruited, and correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't it more so coaches and teams were really eyeing you because, well, one, your size, two, you were an athlete, you had that athleticism, you played the game smart. Was it kind of an unknown thing for a lot of teams?
That's a great question. I think that they saw that, exactly like you said, I had a big frame, I was athletic. What position would I be best at, right? When I went to Wisconsin, it was, okay, he's not a quarterback. Let's try him at tight end and see what happens, right? So I go there and my first spring ball, I'm a tight end, and it was okay. I was, third or fourth string as a redshirt freshman, which is it's solid, right?
Right. I mean, it's just cool. Honestly, I'm sure you're like, I'm on the field.
And so that was cool. I just kept gaining weight because of the food, the nutrition, and then the training. So it got to the point where, okay, I was 270 pounds, and I just kept getting slower and slower. It's like, do we move him? Do we keep him at tight end? I was in my summer psychology class, and I got a text message from my tight ends coach saying, hey, like, come on in. And I immediately knew that I was going to get switched to a line. It was over. And
right.
That conversation was easy. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening. I want to stay as a tight end.
You didn't really fight it.
Didn't fight it at all. And
you saw opportunity there, and you went for it.
Exactly. And I thought that the one thing that was cool from listening to my coaches talk about it was, hey, we think this is a good move for you, and we think this is a good move for the team. So it worked out kind of for both. High school coaches I thought that they prepared me really well for that, chance, because they always said, hey, Iowa wants you to play O-line. Illinois wants you to play quarterback. Wisconsin wants you to play tight end. Michigan looks at you as a D lineman. So it was always kind of this wide spectrum of
And so cool is all
positions.
Big Ten too.
Exactly, right?
Because I'm sure growing up in the Midwest, Big Ten is, I'm an SEC girl. But growing up, Big Ten was what, my dad's a big football. I mean, the amount of conversations you and Brian Doherty have had about football, he pulls you aside in like every aspect. I think he can to talk about it.
Oh yeah.
Because he has all girls, so it's like his outlet. But Big Ten was a big deal for someone from Chicago suburb, plays for those teams. So to be recruited by those teams, was that just kind of like wow, like really eye opening for you?
For sure, but also, you mentioned my cousin Garrett played at Illinois. My dad played at Indiana. Cousin Tommy walked down in Iowa. So it was almost like in my blood that Big Ten was kind of the right move situation for me, right? And
right.
I would say too, like my cousin Garrett, gets recruited by Illinois. He wanted to go to Iowa. My whole most of my family goes to Iowa, right? So it was either Iowa, Wisconsin, Illinois. Those were the big three schools that
not bad options.
Yeah, great options.
Yeah,
but those three schools really were my choices because
top three, okay.
But because I was exposed to them. Cousin Gary is at Illinois, all my family's at Iowa, Indiana a little bit, right? But
not to mention too, Iowa and Wisconsin are known for having the best offensive lines.
No question, right?
So for you to see a future, or you're getting told, okay, I have a future as an offensive lineman, and you at that point hadn't even really had experience with it, but to know, okay, wait, they see me at the top programs that playing those positions. I mean, that must have been pretty surreal.
It was really when I boiled it down, it was Wisconsin or Iowa for that exact reason. Right. I thought that if I went to Iowa, I would have still had a great opportunity to develop as a tight end or as an offensive lineman. Same thing in Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. And there really wasn't a wrong choice. I just went with my gut in the end because it's hard to explain. There's some things that you just do and you have a feeling like this is the right thing to do. And so I went to the Iowa practices. I went to, visits and stuff. And then I went to a Wisconsin visit, and I think you've been on the terrace.
Oh, yes.
I got ice cream on the terrace with, my future classmates, and I was like,
it's
wow,
such a cool campus.
This is so cool. And that was really what sold it for me, was just the full experience of Wisconsin. And I'm sure I would have had a great experience at Iowa, but just that feeling of this is what I think is the right thing.
And I'm sure, too, once you did step foot on the field and started playing, and, during the third and fourth quarter, everybody starts jump around.
Jump,
I mean, you've heard my experiences when I would go to the games and do the jump around. I mean, my ankles, I thought my knees were going to give out. I'm like, I'm not jumping anymore. I mean, I also was a Kentucky fan, but I was rooting, for you. Yep. But, it's a really cool stadium, great program. So that's really cool. I think a lot of people would love to know kind of what we just went through was your decision-making process and, why you chose Wisconsin over those other schools. Then you go to Wisconsin. Yep. You break through and you're realizing, okay, now I'm tight end. I'm moving, transitioning from quarterback and those other positions. And so transitioning from tight end to right tackle, obviously there was more of a body transformation. It just kind of continued.
No question.
And I think it's interesting because it's almost more so people are interested by that. I think a lot of the questions you get, so I don't want to hammer you right now with all about your body and all those things. Because, I mean, if you were a girl right now in this day and age, you'd be like, why are you talking about his body? Like, come on. Like, he's just, like, trying to, like, be big and work and whatever. Like, let him go. But I think it is what people are fascinated by, which I think we should go into a little bit.
For sure.
But when you started to realize, okay, I'm on the O-line, I'm moving here, I need to get bigger, did you know at that time, like, this was kind of your ticket or your chance to play in the NFL?
I did. But I think that looking back at just my body when I was in high school and even as a kid, I was always tall and thin, like really, really thin. So,
oh my God, looking back on like your Instagram and like when you played basketball,
crazy.
You know what I mean? I mean, you always had the tall frame and, you know, were bigger, but definitely, I mean, it's a difference.
I knew that once I got switched from tight end to O-line, my, Coach Chris, Coach Rudolph, they both, in few words said, I think this is a very good opportunity for you to have a future at the next level. So in my head, I was like, okay, if my coaches have confidence that I can do that, then it must be real. But the transition from, 225 pounds to 315 pounds, the only real difference, I guess, was I consistently ate 3 meals a day. I lifted weights, way more than I did in high school. It wasn't like I did anything out of the ordinary, if that makes sense, right? It was
almost like what you were asked to do as a collegiate football player.
It wasn't like I was waking up at 2 a.m. to eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches.
I heard you love peanut butter.
Love peanut butter. Yeah. But I would have a peanut butter. The most I would do is maybe I had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich before I went to bed.
Okay.
And
a little carb loading before you hit it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it wasn't I was guzzling water and I was, eating 5-6 meals a day. I really just ate 3 meals a day and then, had a protein shake and then had maybe a peanut butter and jelly sandwich before bed. It was nothing that was crazy over the top. And compound that with I'm training and going to school, but I can really focus on lifting weights, getting stronger, and then eating. It was almost like the perfect equation. It wasn't something that was totally far-fetched.
And that video too of you, I remember when I was at school, the YouTube video of you like explain what you eat in a day.
Yep.
I mean, that's fascinating. Like that's why I think people are so drawn to this topic. But I mean, I was kind of laughing at like the stuff that you were eating like, just for breakfast. Like, how you're talking about too is just so you. You're like, okay, I'm going to have a little French toast here. I'm going to throw a little chicken in. All right, I think we're going to have some lasagna too. It was just so like, I'm like, French toast with lasagna? Like he's doing it.
I think too now, once I put on a lot of weight really fast, right? Mm-hmm. I put on 100, let's call it 100 pounds in less than 4 years. So now it's what I've learned is, okay, I've put on good weight and I've put on bad weight. Mm-hmm. Now let's try to trim that bad weight and try to, balance out that ratio of good, lean muscle and body fat. Right. That's the biggest change from, now or the time I was at Wisconsin to now is, hey, you got to gain weight. You got to gain weight. Now it's okay. I've gained the weight. Let's try to make it as good as possible.
Because I was going to say, how does someone, maintain that? So that is kind of how, you look at more deeper into the meals and the preparation, all of that to maintain that weight. I know someone said like, oh, so you don't just go to McDonald's.
Yeah, right.
But what is your McDonald's order? Like, what would you get if you were hungry and like, I'm having this for dinner? My
McDonald's order is pretty big.
Okay.
It's legit.
Which like mine is too.
Yeah, I mean, I love McDonald's, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a classic.
Yeah, I would say double quarter pounder with cheese.
Okay, pickles, everything.
Plain,
I mean,
just cheese.
Plain.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
I'm not crazy about pickles, lettuce, tomato. I'm good with.
Right. Pickles just throw you over the edge. It's done.
Ketchup, and mustard. No thanks.
Okay.
Then I'll do, depending on how hungry I am. For sure, one McDouble, and then a large fry and a chocolate shake.
Okay, I was gonna say because I know you like your shakes,
Love
so
shakes.
I knew that was gonna come into play. No, but that's, I mean,
it's a hefty McDonald's order, but It's not, we don't eat McDonald's like.
Right. So it's almost like a treat.
It's a treat.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then, it's for anyone, it's like, if anyone goes, like when you go to anywhere to get fast food, it's almost like, well, I'm already doing it. So I'm just going to really load
Go
it
crazy.
up.
Yeah.
Right. But you did mention that, your college coaches did have that confidence in you when they sat down and talked about the transition.
Yep.
Did that, in a sense, then build your confidence? Did it start to grow?
For sure. And like I said, for them to have confidence in me to say, I think you could be a really good player and you have a future in this game at that position, having not even taken a snap there yet,
right,
was almost like, wow, like maybe, this could be a real legit
like, God,
thing.
my highlight reel is legit.
It was almost like, how do I not, I don't want to mess this up. What do I have to do to be successful? And it was every day being really detailed on how you can get better. We called it at Wisconsin the 1%. It's super cliche, but if you are trying to improve on something and you focus on 7 different things in a practice or in a season, you won't get better at anything. So every day it was always pick one thing to get better at. Today I'm going to get better at my hands. I'm going to have perfect hands. If everything else sucks, that's okay, but my hands are going to be great because that's my intent, that's my focus. And I think that was really helpful for me because I carry that today. Okay, Coach Cromer, when we're watching film, your first step is way too long. You got to shorten that up. Okay, today I'm going to focus on my first step. If everything else sucks, that's okay, but my first step today is going to be great. And then you just continue each day. Okay, my first step's good now. What else can I work on?
I like that 1% thing at Wisconsin. I feel like a lot of younger football players, I don't know how many football players are going to be listening to this, but I hope they can see that those little things can help someone like you, succeed.
For sure. I would say that when I was back to like kids, my brother Joe, and even when I was a kid, right? Mm-hmm. You see Alex Rodriguez on TV, or you see, Mike Trout on TV, these great baseball players or whoever. Doesn't matter what sport.
Right. They're athletes.
But you see them on TV and they make it look so easy. And you're like, man, I'm going to do that. I'm going to shoot like him. And that's not, that's not always a good thing, right?
Right.
You can't shoot like Kobe Bryant and expect to have the same, because what works for him doesn't work for everybody else.
Is there a player, like when you were growing up, that you were most inspired by or looked up to?
I think the number one person I looked up to was my dad, because I always try to make him proud, right? Mm-hmm. And I looked up to my cousins. We talked about it. I really looked up to my family. And I really looked up to my dad. I always tried to make him proud, but I always, looked at my cousins as kind of the pillar of what I wanted to be as in terms of a football player, right? Mm-hmm. And like I always thought my cousin Garrett was the coolest guy ever, because played quarterback, won a state championship, was an all-state player, goes to Illinois, plays in a Rose Bowl. Like that was always really cool to me growing up. And so in terms of, an athlete on TV, right? Derrick Rose and different baseball, football players, of course you looked up to those guys. Those guys are awesome. As a kid,
they're doing what you want to do.
Exactly, right? But to make it real, it was my family, because what you see on TV, watching Derrick Rose play or any other athlete is totally different than, what we would be doing right now if he was sitting in the room. And
it's something where, you have that personal connection in a sense. Well, obviously it's your family, it's your cousins, but even not, I'm sure there was, our guy friends who played football, with you. I'm sure they also looked up to your cousins in a way, and they don't even have that special bond, but just in a sense of someone from Downers Grove North, exactly. Someone who grew up like I did, is doing what I want to do in college. So this joke I keep hearing about that Coach Chris said when he said something about if you drop the ball, you would put knee braces in your locker. Yep. And so at that moment, you really realized that you were getting moved to the O-line, or you eventually would be. Why it was kind of a running joke between you two. So all the linemen in college, I would say majority, wear knee braces. It's to prevent knee injuries, and it's to prevent like when a running back runs through the hole, a guy gets tackled and he rolls up on your legs, that you don't blow your knee out, But the joke was,
when I first got there, I was a tight end. And if I dropped a pass, like, we're just going to put knee braces on in your locker because, you know, I couldn't catch and I might as well just block people and gain all the weight. So it was more just it was a lighthearted joke, but I think he seriously meant it. Like, you're going to move to a line regardless.
It hit you hard.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And did you feel as though, I know you said that you didn't really fight it. You know, you kind of just went with, this is the path that's kind of chosen for you. Let's just take the opportunities as they come. But did you ever in a way want to kind of, because, you know, you came there for tight end, did you want to kind of prove him wrong and be like, no, I'm going to catch this football. I'm going to do these things because I don't want to be moved? Or did you still just kind of think, I'm good with it?
Yeah, I always thought that I was good with it. I never thought like, oh, I'm going to prove you wrong, or because I really thought deep down that O-line was my end goal, or not my goal, but it was the end of the line for me. Like, I knew that was going to be my final spot as a football player. And so I never thought like, I got to prove people wrong, or I just knew that, okay, I'm going to handle my business. I'm going to try to do the right things. Whatever happens, happens.
Right.
And so, like we said earlier, I kept gaining weight. There's nothing I could do about it. Made the switch and just
you couldn't not add the milkshakes.
Right.
It just came with
it was over. I couldn't stop eating Chipotle.
With the process.
Right.
Yes. So now you're put in to was it the Ohio State game?
Yep, the Ohio State game.
Yes. So you were put in for the first time as a right tackle.
Yep.
Were you anxious? Did you know that day that they were going to put you in? Or so, for example, this is also things I want to know about football. Like, is it one of those things like when we've seen the movies, you know, you're standing on the line or whatever, sidelines, and they're like, all right, Edwards in, like, you know, and then you're like, throw your helmet on and just like try to do it? Or was it kind of a planned thing where you set up and prepared for that day?
So it was talked about. I didn't think it was going to happen. And he threw me in there because the guy that was playing ahead of me had messed up a few plays. And so he, exactly what you just said, he was like, Edward, you're in. And I'm like, all right.
Okay, so it is what we envision.
But I didn't have time to think and be anxious about it. It was go, you know. It's different when, and I compare it to this season. So I started, 10 games this year. Those first 6 games that I wasn't playing, you're standing on the sideline and you're holding your breath every play because you want everybody to get up. You don't want anybody to get hurt. And so that was more, I would say that.
You're also like, I don't want to go at all.
Well, no, it was, I don't want people to get hurt and then have to be, get in there. It's different when you're not playing and you're anxious about guys getting hurt as opposed to, I know I'm a starter. I know I'm going to play. I can prepare for it. And back to college, so he throws me in there for 2 drives, and I gave up a sack. I gave up a quarterback hit. So the first 2 drives were horrible. He threw me in there because he wanted me to learn, and he wanted me to fast track my growth. And then we played Iowa the next week, and I played, 8 more series, and I did a good job. So I was like, okay.
Your confidence is growing.
Confidence is growing. But after the Ohio State game, I was like, man.
You probably felt a little deflated. Like, I was given this opportunity.
And I thought I blew it.
I think that really helped you almost, correct me and let me know, but light a flame under your ass.
So I'll tell you a story too. So we played Michigan week 4 or 5 of that season, and the guy in front of me didn't have a good game. And Coach Rudolph, we would watch film on Sundays. We would come in, we would watch the game, we would leave. It would take an hour. And so we get done watching the film, and he called me Eddie. Eddie, I want you to stay after, and I want to talk to you. Okay.
Do you feel like you're going to like the principal's office?
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
So I'm like, oh my gosh, and he goes, you saw the film. Do you think you could play better than him, the guy in front of me?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, yeah, I could play better than him. But deep down, I didn't know, right?
Mm-hmm.
I just said that because I wanted the chance to play.
Right.
And so
sometimes you just fake it till you make it.
Exactly, right? But deep down, I really wanted the opportunity to play. I really thought that if I got the chance, I would prove myself and I would assume that starting role and, we would move on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I get thrown in at Ohio State, and I'm like, man, that wasn't good. My confidence is down. We go to Iowa.
Do you have teammates and they're like, dude? Does that happen? Like, do you ever go out to side and they're just like, man?
that has never happened, but it's kind of a joke. Like, after the game, or, you know, I'll say, man, did you see that? I'd be like, yeah, you
right,
know, or
yeah. No shit, I saw. I'm playing the game with you.
But same thing with this past year with the Rams. Like, it's totally different than when I was in college and I was learning the position. But, man, I was always standing those first 6 games on the sideline like, man, I really want to play. I cannot wait for my opportunity. If I get my opportunity, I know I'm going to just – I always have, like, a mindset of, like, just give me a chance. Just give me a chance. And I know I'm going to make mistakes. I know I'm going to, you know, but I know that I'm going to do some really good stuff. And even if there's bad stuff, I really know that the good's going to outweigh the bad.
And I think too, so you would say that like that situation with Ohio State and just those being thrown in there helped you now in college, realizing, you know, I know what happened when I did get the chance that day. When I do get the chance now,
Don't
full,
mess it up.
You're right.
Yeah. And 100% to your point, like that experience, I always thought of it like I learn best and I perform better when I make mistakes.
And when you just do.
And you just
learn by you go.
You learn as you go.
Learn by you go. Learn as you go.
Yeah.
I'm not one for phrases. So.
But it's true. Like I don't think if I got the chance to play that day and make those mistakes that I would have finished the year the way that I did. Or the same thing with this past season. If I didn't play in those 10 games, you know, who knows how much growth I would have had this season going in and the confidence going into next season, right?
Because correct me, you weren't really projected to really play this season, were you?
Correct.
So when they tell you, okay, you're going to start 10, and you played in 16 games, correct? But you started in 10 of those 16?
Correct.
So I've heard that college ball compared to pro ball is just completely different games.
For sure.
In the sense of quickness and just these veterans who are just have 100%. Been in the sport. Were you on the sidelines kind of like scared shitless? Like, I'm about to go and line up with these men who have played for however many years, could be rookies as well, but face off to them and they could be way bigger than you.
The college game and the pro game are totally different just because in college you can play somebody that you're physically stronger than, bigger than, and outmuscle them, right? Mm-hmm. In pros, that never happens. So my first start was against Grady Jarrett, who's an all-pro defensive tackle on the Atlanta Falcons. And never during that week did I say to myself, like, oh my gosh, this is Grady Jarrett. Like, this is going to be crazy. Like, I don't know if I'm going to – I always was like, it's Grady Jarrett. They're all NFL D linemen. They're all really good. I know I'm a good player, and he's gonna get his, and I'm gonna get mine. Like, and I went out there, and the only thing I told myself was play with good effort and play with technique. And was I surprised that I actually was surprised that I did as well as I did, because your first game, you're like, you got the jitters and you don't know, and you're
stadium's gotta be going crazy too.
But when I left that field and I'm laying in my hotel room, I'm like, man, I can play. Like, I know I can do this. And that was really cool for me because...
That's probably a great moment.
Great moment. And that was really cool for me because you're standing on the sidelines for the 6 games and waiting for your opportunity. You get your opportunity, and after you're like... And I didn't play a perfect game by any means, right? But there were certain times within the game where I was like, man, I can do this. Like,
right. Well, no game can be perfect, you know?
Even if you have the confidence, right, that I know I'm a good player. I know, you know, I'm going to do my best against Grady Jarrett. To actually do it is different. It's one thing to say it to yourself. It's another thing to go out there and do it. And so afterwards, I was like, man, I think I can play. Like, I did some really good stuff today. I
love that. And I feel like that was probably one of the best moments for you.
That was one of the best moments for me as an athlete, just because same thing, like after the game, Andrew Whitworth texted me. He was like, man, you did a really good job today. And I was like, wow, you know, that was really cool because like, I'm sorry, like he has so many other things, you know, in his play, in his day, like for him to go out of his way to text you, it's kind of like, okay, like I did something today. And that was really cool because it reaffirmed how I felt. It wasn't just fake confidence or, man, I think I did a really good job. For him to say that to me, I think that meant more than he even knows, right?
Right.
But that was really cool.
Right. It's kind of like that validation that you didn't know you needed.
Exactly.
This episode of Tailored to You is brought to you by one of my local favorites, Berto's Deli and Pasta Shop, a family-owned Italian deli located in my hometown, Downers Grove, Illinois. Anyone from the area knows Berto's subs and the amazing family behind it. Berto's has been in business for over 21 years, and 3 generations of the Lucadello family can be found working there. I absolutely love them, and shout out to my girl Gianna. It's also not uncommon to find the youngest Lucadello kids there learning great work ethic and entrepreneurship. You gotta love to see it. They offer a wide variety of subs to meet all tastes, but I have to mention the customer favorite as well as my own, the Berto's Italian sub. They also have homemade sauces, fresh salads, and pasta made in-store daily. And to finish it off, you have to have one of their delicious desserts or an Italian ice. I'm getting hungry. I don't know about you. During this time of being at home and trying to find quick dinner options, try their frozen selection with options like lasagna, gnocchi, eggplant parmesan, and more for those days when you just don't feel like cooking, which is every day for me. Make sure you think of Berto's the next time you're having to get together, and they will put together party-sized trays of sandwiches, pastas, salads, and desserts, or simply just for comfort food when you're listening to the Taylor to You podcast. Berto's actually did cater David Edwards' draft party, and word on the street is Berto's knows David's order. I'm gonna let you on a little secret. The 18-inch St. Joe with oil and mayo. You now know what David Edwards' order is and what you will be ordering for the Bears vs. Rams game next Monday. Something you said in college was when you were transitioning to, the position that you thought there may be players that were more quote unquote physically gifted, you had said, and that you just kind of were going to, try your best and jump into this role. Do you feel now when you're playing on the pros and line up against guys, do you feel, because now you're a pro yourself, kind of crazy to say out loud, do you feel as though you're in the same category as being quote unquote physically gifted?
I would say that for sure I'm physically gifted. I would say that my biggest advantage is my length, something that really I was given, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, my brain. I think that I'm a smart player, right? But there are certainly more defensive linemen, offensive linemen in college and pro football that are more athletic than me, and that's a fact. That's not just
that'll come with in any profession.
Exactly.
There's gonna be someone who's better at certain things or has strengths, weaknesses.
So how my biggest thing was, I'm athletic, but I'm certainly not as athletic as a guy like Tyron Smith, the left tackle for the Cowboys,
Mm-hmm.
right? But it's how can I utilize my strengths to my advantage and minimize my weaknesses.
Smart.
Exactly. Playing the game smart, playing with technique, and playing with length. I think I use my strength well, but I'm certainly not going to outrun or outjump or out explosive anybody, right? It's just how can you use your advantages better than the defense's advantages.
And kind of, going into the NFL, one of your first press conferences that you had, people were asking what advice you were given, by other fellow teammates, coaches. And you had said that Rob Havenstein, is it Havenstein?
Yep.
Havenstein. He had told you just come in, work, be a good person, be a great teammate. Has that advice held true?
100%. So I'd asked him, so we have a mutual friend, Kyle Costian. He's a strength coach at Wisconsin. They were like best friends in college.
Right, because he played at Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
So that must have been like a cool also connection
really
for you guys.
Cool.
He's probably like the vet and you're like, the young guy coming in from Wisconsin. He's like probably want to nurture you in a way, and like, come here, baby. Like I was in your position. Like we'll get you through this,
Exactly. But I was asking him, what do I have? Should I do conditioning a certain way? Do I have to work on technique? What do I have to do before I get there? Because I wanted to be prepared. And so he was just like, dude, relax, come in, just work as hard as you can, be a good dude, be a good teammate, and just everything will fall into place. And that is one of the best pieces of advice that I think that I got as a pro player. Everyone wants to make it more complicated and you got to do this, you got to do that. It's just super simple. Be a good teammate, work hard, and be a good person. And most of the time, things will fall in your favor.
And I'm sure there's some NFL players that maybe aren't following that exact advice.
Sure, but
but
like we said earlier, in any profession, doesn't have to be pro football, pro sports. If you're a good coworker, if you're a good person and you work hard, I bet you a lot of the times that things will be in your favor, right?
Well, also that goes into just the respect factor. I respect you, you respect me. You know, if you give people, coaches, your teammates that respect, you'll get it back. It goes both ways.
100%. And being coachable too is like you could be a great player if I'm your coach and I could tell you what to do and you could sit there and say, yep, and then go on the field and make the same mistake. It's like you're not coachable.
You're not taking critical feedback
exactly
the right way.
It goes back to that 1%, right? Okay, every day in my notebook, I would write something. You know, you go into meetings and you watch practice, you watch a game, right? And the same message of what your coach is trying to get across from you on your corrections is very consistent. On this play, you didn't do this. On this play, and it's kind of the same theme, right? Mm-hmm. So in my notebook, I would write, okay, I need to have a better inside hand when I punch. And then it's being intentful when you practice, right? I'm going to go out today and I'm going to have a great inside hand. So I don't make that mistake again, right? That's, to me,
learning from your mistakes and building off of them.
Exactly. Being coachable to me is not making the same mistake 100 times after a coach tries to correct you. Hey, don't do this. Okay, I'm not going to do this anymore, but how do I do it, right?
Right, asking those questions.
Exactly. It's being intentful of, all right, he wants me to have a better inside hand. Well, how do I do that? I need to do this, this, and this.
And I think not being afraid to ask questions is really important too. You know, not being, too proud or too, I'm trying to think of the word, where
proud's, yeah, that's
right. Like where you don't, like, especially in the pros, I'm sure there's players who don't want to be like, well, what can I do to fix going forward? Do you ever find that can happen, in the pros?
For sure. The other thing I would say too is like Coach Sean McVay and Aaron Cromer, the head coach and my O-line coach.
Right.
The one thing that they said is don't be afraid to fail. And you're like,
you're getting some great advice. You're walking into the Rams with a little notebook to take down all the quotes.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Well, when your head coach and your O-line coach say don't be afraid to fail, you're like, oh, because
the weight is off your shoulders.
Because in the NFL, you're thinking, I can't make mistakes. I got to be perfect. And if I
now
don't,
you're working for a paycheck.
Exactly. And the person behind you is trying to take your job, right?
Right. It's kind of, is it cutthroat like that a little bit?
A little bit, right? But the one thing that I learned in that process is if you try to do it the way that they are asking and you don't do it, right? At least they can try to coach you. If you do something,
because you took that step.
Exactly. But if you do something on your own and it's not what they coach, they're going to say, "What is this? I don't want to coach this guy." Or
are you playing football?
Yeah.
Right.
Seriously though, right? But I would say that back to the 1%, right? If he says try, work on your inside hand today, and I work my inside hand and I make mistakes and I fail and it's not good, at least we're going to go in the film room and he say, "Hey, I saw your intent. Here's how we can fix it." So that's where I think don't be afraid to fail comes in is, yeah, you can make mistakes, but have intentful mistakes, right? Don't just go out and make mistakes because it's okay.
Right.
Does that make sense?
No, I think that's great. I think that's really great advice for, maybe one day when I go pro. But you were on the August 13th, 2018 issue of Sports Illustrated. Come on, I got to go into that because that was just so cool. I mean, obviously for you and the rest of your O-line teammates. Yep. And I'm sure, the article was well written. The pictures of you guys eating,
hilarious.
The Red Robin. You had a milkshake in front of you.
Oh, yeah.
You had that milkshake. And so thank you so much for doing this interview and this podcast.
Yeah, for sure.
I want to ask you if doing interviews and these shoots, the press you have to do, because that is part of your job. Is that fun for you?
I would say this is fun, right?
Right. Come on, that's me.
Yeah.
It's different.
It's totally, but it's somebody somebody you grew up with. You're asking great questions and insightful. You did your research and it's super awesome.
Wow. Keep going. I'm like, is it my turn to be interviewed? Pat me on the back.
But a little bit of both, to answer your question, a little bit of both. There are some things that are difficult and, I'm a little nervous about that because I don't think that I'm I don't think that I'm a very like loud, outgoing, and that kind of person. When opportunities get interviewed, I'll always do them, right?
And you do well. I mean, I was watching some, you know, I mean, you're a really eloquent speaker. Are you able to answer questions on your feet?
Well, thank you.
I think it'd be kind of nerve-wracking.
Yeah, that's, and you might get a question here or there. You're like, man, I don't know how to answer that, but
no comment.
Right. It's like anything else, right? If someone in the organization asks me to do something, hey, this is a interview guy that, you know, he'll talk before the game on the radio, and, you know, this interview will be part of that bit, right? Perfect. I'm always good with, you know, people within the organization or people that I know that are, hey, you know, we want to talk to you for just 5 minutes. Perfect. That's awesome. The Sports Illustrated was hilarious because, like, that cover, like, perfectly describes, like, everybody on the line. We all look super weird and got weird, you know, smiles or
big
grins.
old bites in the burger.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it just seemed really organic and just funny.
Exactly. And I think that was perfect for us because, you know, on the cover of a magazine like that, I was thinking this has got to be.
Where's my signed copy, by the way? I was expecting you to bring that.
I was thinking, like, this has got to be, like, you know, perfect, and the lighting, and, you know.
Right.
But it was organic, and it was real, and that was us, and that was cool.
Well, because they're over here, like, you know, we're bringing these football players in. We're not expecting them to know how to model.
Yeah, exactly.
Do the certain poses. So they probably knew what they were getting into, just like you guys. You're going into the 2019 NFL draft, but not many Wisconsin players have declared the draft, you know, early. I mean, ever, especially the O-line. Like, that's not really something you hear of.
Yep.
You were projected in the second and third round.
Yep.
And so you end up getting drafted in the 5th round in 169th pick overall. You have a draft party. Sorry, I couldn't make it, by the way. I was still at Kentucky. Wish I could have been there. But, you know, you're around all these your friends and family. You're seeing players get picked before you, and the next one after the next one after the next one. Are you starting to feel, like, anxious and just like, is this going to work out today?
So, yes. And the range that I had gotten from NFL teams was best case scenario, 2nd round pick, worst case was 5th.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, yeah, I'm good with the 5th round. Like,
I mean, at any round.
Yeah.
Like,
I said that, right? But then until it actually happens, you're like, so we're expecting the 3rd round. That was kind of the vibe ish. 3rd, 4th round was kind of where we were.
Right.
Hopes were 3rd round, but 4th round probably more realistic. And so 2nd round goes by. Wasn't expecting that. It was good.
So you're still eating Birdos. You're having a beer. You're
having
a cigar.
a good time.
You're not. You know, I was 2nd round. Who was 2nd round?
Yeah.
I'm in the 3rd. My name is in the 3rd.
Yeah. 3rd round goes by. Man, I'm a little disappointed, but tomorrow's a new day. We'll be good. 4th round goes by. Whoa. You know, I remember, and, you know, my fiance Caroline sitting right here. We went into the basement, and I was like, oh my gosh, you know, I got to the point where I was like, I was in real bad shape, and I was freaking out. And she calms me down. We go back upstairs, and I go to my agent. He was there too. I go, Joe, what's going on? Like,
right.
Am I going to pay? He's like, dude, relax. Like,
that's probably reassuring. I mean, but also that's something he has to kind of just tell you.
He was probably freaking out a little bit too, but
he's like, in his mind, he's like, dude, we're fucked too. But, like, I'm just going to let you feel better. And then, you know, I'm enjoying the food. I'm enjoying the drinks.
So I'm talking to my agent in the garage. I'm like, Joe, what's going to happen? Like, am I going to get picked? Like, you know, he's like, you're going to get picked. Like, I don't know when, but you're going to.
Wait, how many rounds are there?
7.
Okay.
And so I'm like, as I'm like talking to him, my phone rings. And I was like, no way.
God, I feel like everything for you is just like the stars align, and like the moments where you're just like about to fall, literally, and then it's like, we want you back. Come back to life for us.
And so, you know, our general manager, Les Snead, he goes, you know, has it been a dream for you to play in the NFL? I'm like, yeah, of course, you know. anxiety, frustration, sadness of not being picked in the second, the third, the fourth goes away. It's crazy.
Right.
Because you're like, now you're good, right? I got picked.
You're a professional football player.
Exactly.
You got picked to a great organization.
Great organization. And that was like that was the weirdest moment too, because like once you got picked, it was like, yeah, whatever. Like whatever in the past, like whatever, doesn't matter.
Hakuna Matata.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Wait, so then is that how it works? So do they call you? So it's not like when you see it on TV. It's not like on David Edwards and you're on TV and you're like, yes. like what movie is it? Jerry Maguire? Like,
Yep.
give me the money.
Yep,
you know,
yep.
like, is that what it is? Or is it you get a phone call and you know before, you know, the public knows?
So you get a phone call. It's like 3 or 4 picks before they show it on TV. So if you aren't, you know, picked, basically 3 or 4, if you aren't called 3 or 4 picks before they show it on TV, you're not picked.
Wow.
So, you know, at least 5 or 10 minutes before they show it on television that you were picked.
Right.
And so
once people probably get to the 7th round, they're seeing names on the screen. They know that they haven't been picked.
at a certain point, right, like the last pick of the draft, he'll know, I don't know how many picks there are, but he'll know 4 picks in advance. So after, 3 or, the picks are dwindling down, it's like, what's going to happen?
And, I'm sure other players, as good as you can be, as confident as you are in yourself, you get nervous. You are waiting for that phone call because that decides not just your future and your dream, but more so your job. This is now your financial security. This is your profession. You have been waiting for this moment. I'm sure there's players who haven't, there are players who haven't been picked, and then they have to figure out, well, what am I going to do for a career now? What is my step?
To your point, like it's like, man, I don't, you get to pick where you want to go as an undrafted free agent, but to your point, it's like, man, like, what do I do now? And I think that has, I'm glad that I didn't have to go through that, but I couldn't imagine that, man, that feeling of what now? And
you are a professional athlete, but just out of curiosity, what was your major and what would you have done?
So I would love to be a financial advisor.
Okay.
So I was looking at working for a bank. And
so you were looking a little bit.
Yeah. So
okay.
I did an internship, and I had worked a little bit in that space. And if I didn't make it to the NFL, it would have been try to be a financial advisor for athletes. Or the other thing I looked at was trying to become a coach or an administrator in college or high school. Or
I remember you talked about you want to be a high school football coach, and I so saw it. And I'm like, I'm happy, your dream of the NFL is true, but one day make it back to Downers Grove North, like later in life once you retire, I'm sure they love to have you. This is a really interesting quote I saw that was on, once again, fact check on YouTube. And it said that David is a schoolyard bully on the field and has the mean and nasty demeanor that teams want to see in an offensive lineman. And so, I read this and I literally go, okay, this sentence is just so far from the person I know. You know what I mean? I'm like, there's no way. But do you agree with the statement in a sense of, and if so, how do you separate the two?
I think when you play, especially football, if you're not aggressive and you're not a physical player and you're not, I don't know if it's a game for you.
Right.
And
it has to come out some way or another.
It's got to come out some. So I think that I don't know how to, that's a great question. I've never even thought of that. I think that when I put on a helmet and I put on pads and I, put on the whole gear.
You're David the football player.
Seriously though.
Yeah.
It's like a switch in your head. Instead of being a nice guy, my college coach would joke, like, I don't want nice guys. And that was one thing I learned too, is you don't make friends on football field. Like, my job is to kick your ass. Seriously.
Literally.
And so I think,
what a fun job.
But when you get off the field, if you're an aggressive, physical, no one wants to be around you, right?
Well, that's where, literally almost to that point, I just recently watched the Aaron Hernandez documentary on Netflix, where he was like that on the field, but he also brought that home with him, clearly. And I also am curious, is there smack talk on the field?
The smack talk in the game of football that's like real. a lot of it's nonsense. Like you're like, what did you say? Like,
right. Can we time out real quick, dude? I didn't hear that. I didn't hear that quite right.
Yeah. Some of it's just like it doesn't make sense, and it's just talking to talk, and most of it's swears, and you're just like whatever. But I would say that if somebody says something to me where I'm like, whatever, or it's nonsense. When you challenge me and you're challenging like my manhood or whatever, like that is when I get the switch turns on even more. It's like, I'm going to come after you and you're going to feel it, or whatever. I can remember in college against Indiana, one of their inside linebackers like got in my face and was like, "You're soft." I forget what he said. The next play, I took him like 10 yards out of the field, and I was like in his face. I was like, "Yeah, whatever."
Who's soft now?
Yeah, right.
Like over him?
Exactly. But I actually learned in that because I let emotion get the best of me, and the next like 5 plays I sucked, and I was like, man, I'm never gonna get so riled up to the point where I lose focus on what I'm trying to do.
Which I mean that's hard to do though,
really
because when also just in the sport in general, it's physical. It's meant. I mean, there's moms now who don't want or parents who don't want their kids to play football, because of the physicality. I know Caroline, your fiance, who has mentioned to me just how scared she can be, and how the games can be stressful and watching. And I know when I watch the games at home, when I see you get down or see something, it's like, oh, like, no,
exactly. Because it's your livelihood, right?
Right.
And so you never want to see anybody hurt. And it goes back to what I said earlier, like when I wasn't playing, it's like, man, I don't want to see these guys get hurt.
Yeah.
And then I have to go in for them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I
don't want to be the next one to get hurt.
Exactly. But I always felt like, man, I would hate to see a guy like Austin Blythe or guys on the team, the O-line, like those guys get hurt, because it's like, man, that's their livelihood. They're supporting their family, right? That's
where it comes in more in the NFL. College is like you have to do well because you want to play in the NFL.
Right.
NFL is that is the last step. Now you're protecting and taking care of your family, yourself.
Right. 100%. 100%.
I'm interested to know if you can name the toughest player you have blocked or faced off with, and also what it was like playing the 49ers and against a rookie like Nick Bosa.
I would say the hardest player I blocked this season was probably Geno Atkins. He's a D lineman for the Cincinnati Bengals.
Okay.
But Nick Bosa went to Ohio State. I've actually played him twice in college.
Oh, so you're a little familiar.
So I've known him for 3 years, played against him for this was the 4th time I played him.
That must be cool for both of you. You probably are familiar with each other and say hi. Like, do you ever shake people's hands on the field and ask how you are?
Nick's actually, he's a pretty nice guy too. Like after the game, he's like, "Oh, good to see you." I was like, "Yeah, good to see you." It's
after I literally just beat the shit out of you and called you a pussy. But it's great to see you, and let's catch up soon.
But it's cool in the NFL too. Like, you see guys you played against in college or even in the games, right? It's like everybody's in the NFL too. I feel like they're connected, right? Because nobody wants to see anybody get hurt. Everyone wants to do well because it's your job, it's your livelihood. You're getting paid to do it, you know? So there's no real hard feelings or, real hard emotions against each other because everyone wants to see each other be successful.
But that's really great. That's not something I would have guessed, But
between the lines, when you're playing the game, it's the opposite. It's I'm going to kick your ass and,
right.
I'm going to, whatever. But after the game, it's like that switch, right? It's like, all right, good to see you, man.
How's the wife and kids?
Yeah, exactly.
I think a lot of people would want to know is kind of what is the biggest misconception of NFL players and just the NFL? Is it what you envisioned it?
The biggest misconception, I would say the biggest misconception is that they just think we're players and we're entertainers. Like, we're people too, right?
Right.
So when you're in the stands and I'm walking off the field and you're swearing at me and calling me all these names, it's like, what?
I have feelings.
Yeah. But I always think of it, there was a funny tweet a little while back, like, imagine if I walked into Jewel Osco and I was swearing at the cashier like, you're being too slow, and be like, people would look at me like I'm insane, right? But it's acceptable for a fan to look at me while I'm wearing, a helmet and shoulder pads, and call me every name in the book. But you know what I'm saying?
And you're expected not to react as well.
Not to react.
Because if you react, it's like
we're people
game over.
too.
Right.
Like what you see on TV and your fandom, and I think that's awesome, right? But there's a line at some point where if you're a fan and you're calling somebody, ridiculous names and you're swearing at them and you're just, it's like, what are you doing, man?
Right. Like, this is what I'm giving you entertainment. Just be thankful that I'm out here. Which do you remember watching that video of, I heard it was a guy from Barstool, but he, after the Bears, was it last year or 2 years ago, where Cody Parkey?
Yeah.
Where he missed the field goal and the Bears lost. I mean, this whole ordeal. But he was walking out of the stadium screaming like, F you, Cody Parkey. Like, we pay you so much money and you can't do this one thing, going off on him. It went viral because all this scrutiny and it's only so much a person can really take. Like, I felt bad for him, and my dad's like, him. He's like, well, he lost us the field goal. He was getting paid millions of dollars. He should have made it. But it's hard.
It's true, right? You get paid to do a job. If you don't do the job, people get frustrated. Right. I get that 100%. But at the same time, I couldn't imagine Cody after the game going through his Twitter, going through his Instagram, his Snapchat, or his text. I'll give you an example. When we played Arizona this year, and I had 3 holding penalties, which was unheard of.
And that's bad.
Really bad.
Okay.
Horrible.
I told you guys I'm learning.
And after the 3rd penalty, Todd Gurley scored a touchdown. I got called back because I had the holding penalty. After the game, I had 3 people message me on Instagram like, you screwed up my bets. You screwed my fantasy league. It's like, what? And they're like,
right.
Come on, man.
As if it's ruining their lives
exactly.
That much. But people are vested. It is, fantasy football. People go crazy.
But that's the biggest misconception, I think, is they see you on TV or they see you on the field and you can say and do whatever you want to them. It's like, you're a person too, and you don't talk to me or treat me like that. Like you see NBA players.
Did you guys hear this? Don't treat them like this.
But I get it. If you're yelling or whatever and you're passionate about, it's just don't treat me like a piece of, meat or, you know what I'm saying?
You've worked your way up here. You deserve the respect as well.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's really interesting. I would have never honestly thought that would have been the answer. You grew up in Chicago. You were a Bears fan. Lifelong Bears fan. Mm-hmm. What was it like playing the Bears as a pro player and beating them?
That was definitely one of the coolest things ever. But
also, you had friends who came to visit, and they were in the field, in the stands.
Yep. That was really cool because, like you just said, you grow up watching, the C on the helmet and the colors, and you're like, you run out there, you're like, wow.
Dicka lived down the street. Yeah, right.
But you're like, wow, this is real. And that was one of the first moments I was like, man, this is it's different when you're watching it on TV, and then you watch or you watch it in the stands. It's like you're out on the field and you're like, I'm playing the Bears,
right. The team that you idolize in a way and looked up to and watched and
right. Exactly. You're
cheered for.
You're and at some point you're like, I remember going to Bourbonnais for their training camp and getting Rex Grossman's autograph. I was like,
oh my gosh, so wild.
But it comes full circle and you're like, holy crap, that's super cool because
this is me now. I'm going to be signing autographs.
Exactly. And that's
so cool.
That's that was really cool for me just because as a kid, going back to your dreams, right? Mm-hmm. I was living my dream of playing against or, the Bears.
Right. And would you ever say too, playing for the Bears be living that dream even more?
I don't know. I love playing for the Rams. The culture, Coach McVay, the staff, the way they take care of us. I really feel like I'm spoiled playing for the Rams because
that's amazing.
Everything about them is top of the line, first class. People are great.
You're not getting snowstorms.
Yeah. The weather's awesome. I couldn't imagine not playing for the Rams. really. I mean, it was when I first got drafted, you're nervous. I moved to California. What's that? I mean,
it's a big transition.
Huge transition.
From the Midwest, where that's all you've known. You played football collegiately in the Midwest.
Exactly.
You really haven't left.
Haven't left.
Now
I'm in California,
right.
West Coast. Like, what is it going to be like?
Very different culture than the Midwest, right?
But it's everything about it has been so awesome, unbelievable.
Exceeded your expectations.
Exceeded my expectations, and I could not imagine not playing for them. But I just think that everything you said it earlier. Everything happens for a reason.
It's my motto.
And I had some success this season. It was like, it was almost like everything was meant to be that way.
Right.
You know,
and it all came full circle.
It all came full circle.
But I mean, that's just also amazing. I love to hear it. There's so many people who you've grown up with that are watching you on TV and seeing you do all these great things and are so proud. So it's just see you also deep down genuinely love it.
Yeah.
You know, it just makes it even more exciting.
Yeah.
So I am just so excited to see what more is to come for you. And I feel like, we really went into your story, but I would love to have you on again because I feel like I could talk to you, like I said, for hours.
Yeah.
And there's more to go into. But is this your first podcast?
This is my first podcast.
Okay, I got him, you guys. I got him for his first podcast. This
has been awesome, and this was super well done. You did a great job, and I would love to come back on this.
Guys, he's being forced to say that. I just slid a note over to him to finish with some concluding thoughts.
Yeah.
No, but really, thank you. And, I love what you're doing. I can't wait to see more.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Dave.
Yep.
Where are you going? It's your girl, Taylor. I'm back. Thank you for listening to this episode, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I know you want more, so subscribe to the Tailored to You podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. I also encourage you to make this podcast tailored to you. Visit t2upodcast.com to submit your questions, topics of interest, types of guests, really anything. Just say hi to me. And I hope even your own story, because I'm eager to hear and share it. Let's have some fun. We'll talk soon.